Thursday, December the 15th, we are in council chambers for a special council public planning meeting. Councillors, declarations of peculiar interest and general nature thereof, please. Seeing none, may I please have a motion to approve the agenda as has been circulated? Councillor Kim, Councillor Tom, comments or questions? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Planning applications, we have two this evening. Welcome to Aurora's public planning meeting. The purpose of the public planning meeting is to inform the public and obtain public input regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendments and an official plan amendment. No decision will be made on the applications this evening. For each of the planning applications that will be considered by council tonight, the following process will occur. Town planning staff will outline the purpose of the planning application. The applicant will then be given an opportunity to make a presentation and address issues that have already been raised in the staff report or public concerns. Following the presentations, members of the public will be invited to offer their comments or concerns respecting the proposal, and then either the applicant or town staff will address those questions as appropriate. Once we've heard from members of the public, I will ask members of the council if they have any comments or questions with respect to the presentation. It should be noted that a comprehensive report will be prepared and presented to a future general committee meeting, assessing the merits of the application before us and providing council with a recommendation for consideration. It's very important that the town receive the correct name and addresses of the individuals having an interest in the planning applications. Therefore, if you plan to speak at council this evening, or if you wish to be notified of any future council or committee meetings concerning the applications being considered, you must complete one of the green interested party forms that Linda is holding up, and please return it to Linda before you leave this evening. Under the Planning Act, the applicant or residents have the right to appeal any decision of council on a planning application to the Ontario Municipal Board. But you must verbally express any comments or concerns here tonight, or submit any comments or concerns in writing to the town prior to council adopting an amendment. The Ontario Municipal Board may dismiss all or part of an appeal made in respect of an application. This public meeting is being audio and video recorded. Your name, address, comments, and other personal information are being recorded according to the Municipal Act and the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. This will help our town clerk prepare accurate minutes and to create a record that is available to the general public, including the town's website. Questions about this collection should be directed to the town clerk, Town of Aurora. I will now ask the Deputy Clerk to confirm that notification to the public has occurred as required by the Planning Act. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Respecting item 1, application for zoning bylaw amendment, Worthman and Swinar, 19-21 Matchell Avenue, Lot 5, registered plan number 36, file number ZBA-2016-11. On November 24th, 2016, a notice of public planning meeting was published in the Aurora and the Aurora Banner newspapers and given by mail to all addressed property owners within a minimum of 120 meters of the subject lands. A notice of public planning meeting sign was also posted on the subject lands. Respecting item 2, application for official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment, the gathering place of Aurora, 210 Edward Street, part of Block B and C Edward Street, registered plan 488, Part 165R13909, file numbers OPA-2016-02 and ZBA-2016-06, related file number SP-2016-09. On November 24th, 2016, a notice of public planning meeting was published in the Aurora and the Aurora Banner newspapers and given by mail to all addressed property owners within a minimum of 120 meters of the subject lands. 2 notice of public planning meeting signs were also posted on the subject lands fronting Edward Street and Dunning Avenue. Planning meeting notification has been provided in accordance with the Planning Act.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Ramuto, would you please start the presentations?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. I'll ask Glenn Letman, our Manager of Development Planning, to provide the presentation on item 1, and I see the owners of the Maychell property are here representing, and they have Gary Templeton as their planner. Glenn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. This evening's public meeting is to deal with a rezoning bylaw amendment application. Applicant is Worthman and Swinar at 19-21 Maychell Avenue, zoning file number ZBA 16-2011. The proposal is for a zoning bylaw amendment to rezone the lands from its current zoning of central commercial C2 zone to a special mixed residential R5 exception zone. the zoning bylaw amendment would allow for the severance of the existing home on the property, the existing lot on the property, into 2 residential lots. This is a location map of the proposal identified in red. Lands are located on the east side of Machel Avenue. The lands to the north, or the road to the north, is Irwin Avenue. The buildings in this area, some of them have been recently built. Some of them date back to the previous century. The existing home on the property is approximately 1880, the existing semi-detached home. Directly to the east are lands currently under development by Carpino, Treasure Hill, for a total of 126 townhouse units, and the lands primarily in the area are single detached residential. There is an apartment building further to the north on the west side, as shown on the slide. In terms of the policy context considerations of the application, we'll be reviewing the application for compliance with a number of policies, provincial, regional, and municipal. The provincial policy statements, which apply to all planning applications, as does the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan, the York Regional Official Plan, the Town of Aurora Official Plan, and of course our zoning bylaw 2213-78 as amended, as well as any development policies that the municipality wishes to apply. The existing official plan designation, the lands are designated stable neighborhoods by the Town of Aurora official plan. The stable neighborhood designation permits primarily ground-related housing forms, including single, semis, and detached residential uses. The designation of stable residential protects from incompatible forms of development, but permits areas to evolve and be enhanced over time. This is a schedule which shows the existing official plan schedule. The area shown in checkered or black and white checkered is the area which denotes the Aurora Promenade to the east, and the subject lands are shown in the yellow or green coloring, which fall within the stable neighborhood designation. The existing zoning of the property does have a central commercial C2 zone, which has been in place since the zoning bylaw was passed in 1978. The C2 zone allows a long list of retail and commercial uses, but does not permit the single or semi-detached dwelling on the property. The building exists as legal non-conforming. This is an existing schedule showing the zoning of the lands. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment would rezone the lands to a residential zone most suitable for the proposed lotting, which would be an R5 zone, to contain an existing semi-detached residential dwelling, and the dwelling would be, the lot would be severed into 2 independent parcels of land. It's a single lot at this time. The lot frontage is approximately 20 meters. The lot depth is approximately 40 meters. And the idea, or the purpose solely behind this application, is to allow the severance of that lot. Site-specific exceptions will be required to the bylaw to recognize the existing lot frontage and certain setback provisions of the existing home. This is a zoning schedule to show how the lands would be zoned into an R5 zone exception. There would be a future consent application to be considered by the Committee of Adjustment in the future. The zoning would be in place, or the purpose of the zoning would be to put it in place to allow the consent to be approved and proceed to the severance of the lands into 2 separate parcels on title. This is a plot plan, survey plan showing the existing home. Point left is towards north. Machel Avenue you can see to the bottom, and the existing semi-detached home, as I mentioned, was built around 1880. And this is a photograph of the existing home. Now, we've circulated the application for comments, and we've received from preliminary comments. Matters will be evaluated in a report to follow up the General Committee to deal with compatibility to surrounding existing and future land uses in the area, cultural heritage impact, conformity to stable residential the stable residential designation of the official plan. Staff will undertake a technical review of the subject applications addressing any matters as brought forward at this public meeting by either council or the public, and we will be preparing a comprehensive report to a future general committee meeting. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Glenn. Mr. Templeton.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. As has been indicated, I'm a planning consultant and I represent these applicants in regard to the property at 19-21 Machel. And Glenn's given a very good overview. I'll try not to repeat what he's already said to you. This existing semi-detached dwelling on the property, it's not a designated property in terms of heritage, but it is included in the Town of Aurora Register of Properties of Cultural Value or Interest. It's, in most cases, in my experience, semi-detached dwellings are typically divided, the units each having a lot to go with them, and the division occurring along the common or party wall. In this instance, the property has never been so divided, and so it's one lot with two units on it that are on that one lot. The owners, Rob and Bernadette, bought this property and have owned it now since a month or two back, and they want to divide it into separately conveyable parcels of land. And the plan on display shows parts 1 and 2 as are proposed, with the division in 2 corresponding to the demising wall between the two units in the existing building. The problem that arises with the severance is the property presently is designated, as Glenn has indicated, Central Commercial C2, and that's fine under present circumstances as a legal non-conforming use, but it must conform to the bylaw for the consent application to be positively dealt with. And so to achieve the conformity zoning-wise, this application has been brought before you to rezone the property to special mixed density R5 residential zone. In my opinion, the application is in accordance with the applicable policies of the Town of Aurora official plan and related policies from the Region of York and Province of Ontario planning documents. The applicants are in the process of refurbishing the old semi-detached dwelling, and that work is inside and outside, and is being undertaken in a manner that's sensitive to the heritage attributes of the existing building. Their interest and efforts in that regard, combined with the requested zoning and the future severance application for which will be made in the new year, I expect, those will go a long way in ensuring that the building remains part of Aurora's visible heritage. With that, Mr. Mayor, if there are any questions that I can help with or the applicants can help with, we'll do our best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Templeton. First, I'll just ask if there's any members of the public that would have any comments on this application. Seeing none, I will ask members of council. I've got Councillor Tom and then Councillor Gardner. No? Okay, Councillor Gardner. Mr. Templeton, do you have comments or questions for Mr. Templeton, Councillor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and you can stop me if you think this should be for the actual agenda part, but I don't understand how a lot that has 2 attached houses on it can be severed into 2 lots, and why, unless the intent is to tear down the house that's on it and use it as 2 building lots. Is that the intent here?
That is not the intent. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the intent is to sever the parcel of land so that there are two separately conveyable parcels of land with a semi-detached unit. The owners, I've been in the building, and they're in the process of renovating that building inside and out, and I think you'll be pleased with the result. With one of Aurora's oldest buildings, I hazard to say, considerably improved compared to the state that it's in today.
Thank you, and I certainly agree with making something that's legal non-conforming legal, but I still can't. So you have two attached houses that basically straddle a lot. They're not on one side of the lot or the other. They're
Mr.
in the
Mayor,
middle of the lot.
It in, I think, most ways is like any other semi-detached dwelling, old or new, in the town of Aurora. They're all, in my experience, I can't recall coming across one that hasn't been divided in this manner in what I've seen. Typically, a semi-detached dwelling is divided down the middle along the party wall, and that dictates basically the division of the property into two lots. And I can tell you as well that with regard to most semi-detached lots, I think all semi-detached lots, and you would have them in newer plans of subdivision as well, they will be shown as one lot. And the building will be built, and the division of it into two will occur through part lot control exemption, a bylaw that would come before you in such cases. So this is the same thing. In this case, it's not through part lot control exemption because that's an inappropriate tool to use in this case, but it's through the consent process that your committee of adjustment would be dealing with in the weeks or several months to come.
Thank you, Mr. Templeton.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Templeton? Thank you, Mr. Templeton.
Thank you.
Linda, if you could bring the motion up, please. Someone put that on the floor? Councillor Tom, thank you. Councillor Perry, second. Comments or questions for Mr. Ramuno, please? Councillor Perry. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Ramuno. If at some point we wanted to designate the properties, would there be any impact because of a severance, or would we still be able to?
Mr. Ramuno.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, once the zoning goes through and the actual severance occurs to actually create two separate parcels, we would work with the owners at that point and have to conduct the evaluations. So you would then be looking at designating both properties at that time.
Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. I wouldn't mind if Mr. Ramuno just commented on what Mr. Templeton said with regards to, let's say a newer subdivision, part lot control, how they dealt with that and stuff, just to confirm that process.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. No, Mr. Templeton is correct. I mean, this is a little unusual in that, we're coming in with a rezoning application just because of the history of the old zoning on this. So council sees just about, every month part lot control applications to create the actual severance of semi-detached or townhomes, and we've seen a lot of those in our new 2B, 2C area. In this case, you're not going to see a part lot control. After the rezoning, you see a consent application just because we're dealing with, it's a simpler process when you're dealing with one or two lots to deal with it that way. You see part lot controls at council because you're dealing with multiple lots, and it's just a better way to do it. So what happens is that current lot can only be divided once a common wall is constructed, so the surveyors can actually get in there and survey the exact middle of the common lot once it's built. So this is, it's very typical. Council probably hasn't seen many of these consent applications because typically they go straight to the committee of adjustment. but you deal with power law control applications on a regular basis. Yeah.
Councillor? Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Ramuno. It seems that the lot frontage is 10 meters and looks pretty consistent from the front to the back, so that's roughly about 33 feet wide. Just exploring all the possibilities in the future, if it was taken off the list and one wanted to put in 2 separate single detached homes with the side yard setbacks, how wide can an individual building be in that scenario?
Mr. Moon?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, again, it's not the applicant's intent, but on a 60-foot wide lot, you know, if the building were to come down, that's a separate process. You would then create 2 30-foot wide lots. We do have some 30-foot wide lots in town. You're typically looking at a narrow home, single car garage. We would still need proper side yard setbacks of at least 4 feet on 4 foot on both sides. So, but I mean the intent here is obviously they're renovating the home and working with the existing home. But we do have 30-foot wide lots that contain small single detached homes on them, single car garage.
Yeah, Mr. Bruno, isn't the width 10 meters or about 33 feet or 30 feet?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, correct. The overall lot width is 20 meters, so each unit would have a 10-meter width, and that is about 32 feet each. Yeah.
Each. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councillor Gardner?
Mr. Muno, the lots the 2 lots to the south look pretty narrow as well. Do you know what their dimensions are for frontage?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and Glenn can correct me, I think the lots immediately to the south, they are similar sized lots, and there are 2 existing semi-detached units immediately to the south as well.
I believe the adjacent units are detached units. I think there's 1 semi-detached in the area, so I'm going on recollection, Mr. Mayor, but the majority of the units, there's a varying size of units in the area. If you look at the existing zoning schedule as figure 3, you'll see some of the variations of lot areas. Now, the property to the south is an R524, so I'm having some recollection that would likely be a semi-detached dwelling on that property.
Thank you. Thank you. In any case, they look very narrow, so they don't look like they'd be much wider than 10 anyway.
If I may, Glenn, if you look at figure 5, I believe the dimension is 10 meters up along the, what would be the east lot line. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Mayor. It does show the adjacent property directly south as being 10.8 meters of 10.06 meters, I'm sorry, of frontage.
Thank you.
Good one, Mr. Mayor.
And that's without my reading glasses.
Well, then, really good for you. So could you just, through you, Mr. Ramuno, could you just speak to the Committee of Adjustment application?
Mr. Romero?
Certainly. So what would happen is, as Mr. Templeton mentioned, council would have to approve the zoning bylaw to permit the the zoning. Then the applicant, that way it would be in conformity with the future consent application. Once the zoning is approved, the applicant would submit a consent application, again, to simply divide the lot into 2 individual semi-detached units, and that application would go straight to the Committee of Adjustment.
So for the other side of the
Excuse me,
table, who may
gentlemen.
not have been listening,
Please.
for clarification, we do the zoning part, the Committee of Adjustment agrees to the severance.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions, please? Okay, it's calling the vote on the motion, then please all in favor. Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming out. We'll move to item 2, and I guess that's Marty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This application is for an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment for 210 Edward Street, and it's by the Gathering Place of Aurora. File numbers OPA 2016-02 and ZBA 2016-06. There's also a related site plan application that's been permitted, or it's been submitted, and the file number is SP 2016-09. The proposal is to redesignate the subject lands to permit a place of worship use that would take up the entire building, where currently the place of worship is not permitted. The zoning bylaw amendment would be to expand the place of worship use to the entire building, where now a place of worship is permitted under a size restriction. And there would be site-specific zoning provisions for parking, maneuvering, curbs, and parking setbacks. The site plan is implementing it to expand the existing place of worship, and there would be an addition to the front of the building facing towards Edward Street and some reorganization of the parking area. The property is located on the west side of Edward Street, right at Dunning, and there's industrial uses on the other side of the street, a creek to the west, and residential on the other side of that. The applications will be reviewed for consistency with provincial, regional, and municipal policies, including the provincial policy statement, the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, Lake Simcoe Protection Plan, York Region and Town of Aurora official plans, and the zoning bylaw. So the designations, there are actually two designations on the site. The northern kind of tip of the property has a public parkland designation, and the rest of the site in the gray is existing employment light industrial service. And the building, the actual building is on the gray portion. It's not within the public parkland designation, and the addition is not either. It's entirely within the existing employment light industrial service designation. The existing employment designations intend to accommodate a broad range of employment opportunities, as well as service commercial uses and retail uses of quasi-industrial nature within existing employment areas. And the reason why a place of worship is permitted currently in the zoning bylaw with the size restriction is because limited institutional was permitted in this designation in the old official plan, the 1991 official plan, but in the current official plan within the current light industrial service designation, that is not a permitted use. So the official plan amendment was deemed necessary. The zoning map shows the existing zoning, which is the M2 zone. And that zone is a site-specific zone that restricts the place of worship to 232 square meters, and that's currently there in the northern portion of the building, while the majority of the building has been used as a bowling alley, which is now closed. The zoning application is to change that number from 232 square meters to 1,516 square meters, which is the size of the entire building. The site plan shows what is being proposed on site. The existing building is the outline without any filling, and the proposed addition is in the southeast corner of the building, facing towards Edward Street, and that's an entrance canopy, and it's kind of a glass addition that would be an entrance, a lobby to the church. There are also some reorganization of the parking area. That addition would be in an area that is currently used for parking, and so some of that is being reorganized to make more sense. There was also a sidewalk constructed along the street, along Edward Street, in 2015, and so that has made some changes to the way the parking layout is set up. So that the site plan would change the parking setup so that it wouldn't be onto the town's right-of-way the way it used to be. So this table kind of, it's pretty small. It has a long list there of all the permitted uses. And the only difference there in the permitted uses is that the GFA, the maximum GFA for the place of worship has gone from 232 to 1,516 square meters. The other changes are both to recognize existing site conditions and to have a couple of changes with parking. So the parking dimensions, some of the parking spaces are proposed to be 4.2 meters instead of the 5.5, which is the regular size in the zoning bylaw. The lot frontage minimum would be 12 meters as opposed to 30 meters, which is the current requirement. That's to accommodate that's an existing site condition. Parking maneuvering spaces would be reduced, whether it's one-way or two-way, to 3 meters or 6 meters. And some changes: no required curb, no minimum separation between the parking street and the street line, and no setback from the side or rear yards for the parking areas. The application for zoning and the official plan have been circulated to staff, and we are looking at a few things as for the application. We're looking at whether or not the maximum GFA is needed as it was proposed. We're also looking at the parking layout and the circulation, and it should also be noted that the site plan application has been submitted, but that has not been reviewed in detail at this point. Staff will continue to work with the applicant to finalize all outstanding technical matters, and as well as comments received from the public and council, and a comprehensive report will be presented to council for consideration and direction at a future general committee meeting. Thank you.
Marty, before you go away, just a clarification. The entrance feature is on the southeast, pardon me, it's on the northeast corner, not the southeast corner. Could you go back?
That's correct, thank you.
Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. For the proponent, I believe, is Mr. Mike Crow. Mr. Crow?
Thank you very much for having me, Mr. Mayor, members of committee, and staff. My presentation almost mirrors Mr. Rocco's presentation exactly, so I don't want to be too repetitive. I'm happy to go through it. It's what we're here for, to speak to the application. So I don't want to belabor the points, but if I can just walk through quickly. So just again, subject lands are known as 210 Edward Street. The current planning applications are for an official plan amendment under OPA 2016-02 and ZBA 2016-06. The purpose mainly is to permit the expansion of the existing place of worship use within the existing building. The OPA is needed to allow the land use, and the ZBLA is primarily to address the increased size of the use and also some of the existing site conditions: parking, drive aisles, landscape buffers. We are still working with staff on review and planning instruments. We've received some comments to date. We've had some communication with Mr. Rocos on those, but there's more to come and there's more to look at, so we're still in those stages of doing that. And again, so this is my take on just setting the context of the site. So you can see outlined in red is the entirety of the subject lands, placing it at Dunning Drive there, and this is the parcel fabric just to set the context of the size of the property. So to the west you'll have the existing residential and the public park, and then to the east would be the industrial property. This is as the building looks. This is just from Google Street View, and you can see the notch in the building where the existing entrance is. That is the area we're talking about for possible new entrance for the facility, and that would be consistent with some aesthetic upgrades to sort of change the look of the building from what is a bowling alley to a place of worship. So that's sort of the main purpose of that expansion. So again, the existing building, former bowling alley. The site is mainly developed with parking and asphalt drive aisles. The existing site-specific zoning came through bylaw 4709-05D, which allowed that place of worship use, but also introduced that maximum GFA of 232 square meters. We're proposing to increase that to occupy the entirety of the building and then accommodate roughly 100 square meters for that new entryway addition. And again, we would look at the site primarily as it's developed today and try to capture most of that through zoning regulations. Again, the OP designation is existing employment, light industrial / service designation. And this does not currently permit a place of worship use, but the OP at the time of the previous zoning did allow for that type of use, and so therefore we're now needing to apply for the OPA to introduce that into the planning documents. And certainly in our analysis, we've given consideration quite a bit to the land use compatibility and also the employment land needs for the town and for the region. So our report considers those in detail with some analysis in that regard. This is the just an excerpt of the site plan. Obviously tough to read on the screen there, but primarily recognizes the existing condition. But if you can see the shaded area looking like a enlarged L, that is the proposed entryway addition, and you can see it's in that notch of the existing building. This is a schematic floor plan. The large area to the upper right-hand corner of the drawing with the seating would be the congregation area, and that is the basis for the parking requirements, so the seating capacity for parking requirements. Throughout the space, there's various breakout rooms, some offices, a nursery for minding children during service hours, washrooms, and some related maintenance facilities. And that's all I have for now, but certainly would be happy to answer any questions while I'm up here.
Thank you, sir. I'll just open it up and see if there's any members of the public that have any comments. Seeing none, I will ask members of council if they have any questions for the proponent, please, with respect to this presentation. Seeing none, thank you, sir. I will ask Linda to put the motion up on the screen, please. Would someone put that on the floor, please? Councillor Thompson, thank you. Councillor Tom. Comments or questions with respect to the motion? Councillor Perry, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't expect this to be answered at this point in time. I think once it's on the table, but we're expanding the site of this facility, 7 times for the use of a church. I'm just looking to see how all the parking shakes out, because I would presume that parking is well utilized now, and so as things progress, and I recognize it's not all being used as a church facility and seating, but I'm just looking to see how parking ends up working out, because that is, at first blush, something that strikes me as a potential concern. I'm happy to move forward on it at this point in time, but just.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. Through to Mr. Ramuno. I just want to understand why they're requesting that M2 zoning. Most places of worship we see will have an institutional zoning in other parts of town, and so I just want to know if the purpose or the use really is a place of worship, why would it just stick to the M2 zoning as opposed to asking for an institutional zoning? I think I heard reference to the old versus the new OP, but I wanted to get clarity to understand why they wouldn't ask for an institutional zoning.
Mr. Muno.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. It really is a result of how our new official plan is worded, and the permitted uses that are listed under that designation. Institutional uses aren't permitted. Under the old OP pre-2010, limited institutional uses were permitted in the industrial areas. And then back in 2005, under that OP, they were permitted to come in with that site-specific zoning to permit a portion of the building to be permitted as a place of worship. In 2010, we updated our OP. We essentially kept the same designations, and in this case, it's a general industrial service industrial designation, and we kept most of the uses the same, but we eliminated the institutional uses. And I was around at that time, and quite frankly, I don't remember why we did that. It is not, in my mind, it is not an employment conversion issue. because only residential or retail is considered an employment conversion issue when it comes to employment lands. So it's really an issue with the way the current official plan designation is worded. It doesn't permit institutional. So to conform to the official plan, I'm sorry, they are amending the official plan to permit a place of worship and to keep the M2 zone as is. And again, they are keeping the old, all the existing employment uses on the property.
Thank you. And just one other question, just to confirm, they're not asking for any increase in the height as a result of the changes in the zoning, are they?
Mr. Miller?
So, Mr. Mayor, no, it's the existing zoning is 10 meters, and they're working to within that 10-meter height. And based on the, and there is a site plan, and that site plan will come to council at a future date for that front entryway addition. It's going to be it'll have to be within that 10-meter height limit. It's a single-story building as is, so we don't foresee that to be an issue.
Fine, and I'm supportive of coming to general committee and getting answers to those questions that have already been raised.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, what was the rationale for limiting the square footage of a building or part of a building for a place of worship?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gardner, you mean back in 2005? The reason was the official plan within the employment designation specifically permitted limited institutional uses. That's how it was worded. So when they did come in with that rezoning back in 2005, to conform to the official plan, the entire building couldn't be permitted for institutional uses. So they came in with that portion being, 230 square meters worth of the building.
But you're not sure what the rationale was to limiting?
I'm sorry, with respect to the limited institutional provision of the official plan pre-2010?
No, it
Oh.
says with respect to the
Size, you mean?
yes.
Yeah,
and
no,
not the whole building.
Correct. To be honest, no, I'm not sure if the existing owners would know. My understanding is that is all the area that they needed at that time because the bowling alley was still in operation, so they took over that portion of the building, and they had come up with that 230 square meter area of the building.
Thank you. How would this affect the amount of taxes that we get on this property?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's a good question, and other council members have just recently asked me that as well. The Provincial Assessment Act does provide for exemptions for religious organizations from municipal property tax. So it's beyond our control, the local municipality's control. So if they do apply, and I'll be honest, I'm not aware, and I can report back to council, I'm not aware of whether the current place of worship is whether we're collecting property tax on that portion. But if they do apply and they're deemed to be eligible, they could be exempt from property tax for the entire building if the zoning goes through.
Thank you. And I presume we're collecting taxes on what was the old bowling alley?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't know. Good question. I will
You'll find out.
look into that and report back to council at a future date.
Thank you. There's no members of the public here. Has this property been well signed? Councillor Puri says yes. So the residents don't seem to have any issue with.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I mean, both applications this evening have had the proper signage on the property, notices in the paper, and we haven't heard from members of the public on either application this evening.
Thank you. And my last concern, the parking standard to reduce the width by 1.3 meters. I think that's about, is that about 4 feet?
Isn't it? It's the depth.
The reduction of the depth.
That's, to you, Mr. Mayor, reduction in depth. It's something we want to take a look at. What their current conceptual plan shows is approximately 50 spaces, which under our current zoning bylaw would be sufficient for the number of seating that they're proposing for the place of worship if it's expanded. But it's something we definitely have to take a look at with respect to number of spaces and how it's going to function and maneuverability on site. So we'll have to take a look at those technical details.
Thank you, and also accessible spots.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Abel. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we used to bowl there as a family, and I believe the first sanctuary was like a party room, or if you wanted to have a. And so I was not active in the political scheme of things, and noticed that it was a sanctuary. It's a beautiful sanctuary, actually. But I think overall, when we look at this, and I would like this information brought forward, because I think it's valuable that we disclose this and note that it would have been a commercial operation bowling alley, and then converted in a small portion to a sanctuary. And now it's going to be fully institutionalized. So it would, in my mind, it would apply for exemption from property tax. So the long and short of it is 20 years ago, we were collecting taxes, property taxes on a business, and now it's going to be converted. And we should be aware that that impacts the tax assessment. I would note that the owners of this are very active in our community and helping, and I've seen them often doing great things for our community. So I'm always in support of anything that is supporting our community. But I just want our decision to be known based on that. And I have no problem with it, but I just for clarity and transparency. So I think it's valuable, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Mr. Ramuno, that be brought forth so that we have that understanding as we make our decision as it comes to General Committee.
Councillor Tom.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And further to John's or Councillor April's point, if it, because we're not converting it to institutional, it's still going to be whatever the zoning is now. We're just expanding the area for the exception, right, for the place of worship. So my question is, if they apply for the exemption for property tax, and let's say, I know this is speculation, but down the road they sell the place, and then the guy who buys it wants to turn it back into whatever it is now, or like a, some other light industrial use, then we're going to have to reassess it for the tax roll. So it will be, it only exists non-taxable as a church, and then once it gets reconverted, if it does, then it would be taxed again. You're nodding, so it's okay.
To you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. Taxes would be assessed based on the actual use of the property. So if it does get changed over, they'll need to come in with a change of use to our building department based on whatever they're going to use it for, and that's when, taxes would then apply based on whatever the use is.
And then, so that may be why, because if you rezoned it institutional, then they'd have to come back for another rezoning in the future if that was to happen. This way, they can just convert it back. Okay, thanks.
Correct. Any other speakers, please? Seeing none, calling the vote then. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. That is it, Council. Confirming bylaw, please. Councillor Tom, Councillor Puri, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Motion to adjourn, Councillor Gartner, Councillor Thompson, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. That's it. That's officially our last meeting for the year. Thank you, staff. Thank you for coming. Council, have a great vacation. Break.